Good morning. I'm Brian Curtis.
And I'm Doug Krisner. Here are the stories we're following today.
Donald Trump leads the polls as we head into the Iowa caucus. Let's get more from Dan Schwartzman in New York. Dan.
Hey, Brian. According to an NBC News Des Moines Registry poll, Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump does lead Nikki Haley handily heading into Iowa caucuses Monday. The poll shows Trump with 48% support, Haley sitting at 20%. Haley, taking part in a telephone town hall, says Trump isn't the right choice.
We can't be a country in disarray and a world on fire and go through 4 more years of chaos. We won't survive it. And I think a lot of that is how he communicates and what happens. It just sets us all in disarray.
Haley was taking part in the telephone town hall after her event was canceled due to the weather. Coming in third place in that poll, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis at just 16%. While Trump does hold a commanding lead, support for the former president has softened slightly from 51% in the last poll, which was taken back in December. Meanwhile, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds endorsed DeSantis in the Republican presidential primary. She recently sat down with Bloomberg's Saleha Mohsin on the inaugural episode of the Big Take DC podcast. Reynolds doesn't think Trump has a nomination locked up.
I don't believe the polls. The same polls told us in this last election we were going to have a red tsunami across the country, and that didn't happen. It did in Iowa. It did in Florida because we did what we said we were going to do and passed policies that impact the people that we serve. But it wasn't the case across the country.
Hear more of our interview with Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds on the Big Take DC podcast, and tune in tomorrow for a special edition of Balance of Power at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by live coverage of the Iowa caucuses at 8 on Bloomberg Radio and television. The U.S. has been hit with frigid weather that sent temperatures plummeting to minus 5 degrees in parts of the Midwest, while potentially dumping up to 2 feet of snow in western New York. In Iowa, where that 2024 Republican presidential cycle gets underway Monday evening, the National Weather Service issuing an advisory for, quote, life-threatening wind chills through noon Central Time on Tuesday. According to FlightAware, over 1,300 flights in and out of the country were canceled due to weather. With the possibility of a government shutdown occurring January 20th, congressional leaders working on a renewed stopgap funding bill to keep the government funded into March. An extension plan seems to be a solution as 2 staggered deadlines approach. 4 of the 12 annual government funding bills are needed to be passed by January 19th. The remaining 8 have to be passed by February 2nd. House and Senate leaders working to continue funding at existing levels until March 1st for the first 4 and March 8th for the remaining 8. While Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has begun procedural steps toward a stopgap bill, Republican House Majority Leader Mike Johnson has yet to commit to one. Republican Ohio Representative Jim Jordan says he wants a longer stopgap spending bill past April, and he also says Speaker Johnson will be rejecting the border compromise. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Dan Schwartzman, and this is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. Brian Curtis and Doug Krisner, and we will be joined by Vonnie Quinn a little bit later. Now it's time for the top business and political stories of the hour. China is warning the United States not to interfere in Taiwan's affairs. That's after a U.S.-friendly candidate, Lai Ching-te, won Taiwan's presidential election. On Saturday, Lai signaled that he would cooperate with China moving forward, but it's unlikely that the party, the DPP, would be able to restart talks with Beijing. The Communist Party demands agreement that Taiwan is part of China as a prerequisite for any such dialogue. Talks between China and Taiwan have been suspended over the past 8 years. Kerry Brown is professor of Chinese studies at King's College London. He thinks there's still some room for a relationship moving forward.
Taiwan has 40%, 45% of its trade with China. So that alone means there's got to be some relationship, even if it's not a particularly friendly one.
Kerry Brown. Beijing said that the election result will not change Taiwan's status. And after Lai's victory, President Biden repeated that the U.S. does not support independence for Taiwan. And coming up in a few moments, we will be talking with Ivy Kwek, who is a China fellow at the International Crisis Group, for more on the Taiwan elections.
Well, financial markets may respond positively to those election results for Taiwan, although, as Brian pointed out, that could change if China were to respond more aggressively. Bloomberg's David Ingles has more from Hong Kong.
Local stocks and the Taiwan dollar had already priced in a presidential victory for the DPP and the loss of its majority in the legislature. Experts now say that may lead to a more centrist orientation of policies in Taiwan. and that might provide a positive impact to financial markets. Traders will also be watching Beijing. So far, China's reaction has been relatively mild. It said only that the results do not represent mainstream public opinion on the island. The Taiwan dollar is expected to remain steady as it's driven more by export trends, the tech outlook, and Fed policy in the U.S. In Hong Kong, I'm David Ingles, Bloomberg Radio.
China's financial market regulator says it will adopt a zero-tolerance policy toward illegal behavior. Bloomberg's Joanne Wong has the story from Hong Kong.
China's regulator said it would make sure those who commit crimes pay a painful price. The National Financial Regulator Administration said it would consider revising punishment rules. Authorities also said they would strengthen communication and coordination with China's judicial organizations. The enhanced scrutiny is part of a deepening crackdown that spans finance to health. On Friday, the PBOC also pledged to enhance its market oversight via stronger punishment. The latest moves are in line with President Xi Jinping's vow to eradicate corruption. In Hong Kong, I'm Joanne Wong, Bloomberg Radio.
The U.S. economy could soon get another massive cash infusion. Congressional negotiators are currently talking about renewing business tax breaks and boosting the child tax credit. And if a deal manages to pass a deeply divided Congress, the American economy could see a fiscal boost worth at least $70 billion. Now, needless to say, the extra cash could boost consumer spending, but some economists are saying it could also trigger another round of inflation. And obviously, that could make the Fed's job a little more difficult. Brian?
Well, to some corporate news now, Doug. We're hearing that Apple is shutting down its artificial intelligence team of more than 100 people in San Diego. That story from Bloomberg's Denise Pellegrini.
Sources say the Data Operations Annotations Unit is suddenly being told it's merging with similar operations in Austin, Texas. And San Diego workers are being told they'll be fired if they don't agree to the move. The group also has offices in China, India, Ireland, and Spain. It's responsible for evaluating if Siri hears and responds correctly in various languages. Apple says everyone on the San Diego team is being offered jobs in Texas. Apple's stock has been faltering lately, and Microsoft overtook Apple Friday as the world's most valuable company. Concern about Apple's iPhone business in China has been weighing on the stock. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. Brian Curtis and Vonnie Quinn joins us now from New York. Our guest is Ivy Kwek, who is China Fellow at the International Crisis Group, to take a closer look at the election. So many angles here, Ivy, to talk about. We'll set aside the geopolitics for the moment and just say that for this moment, the status quo has been maintained. But there will be some differences with William Lai's victory here. I'm curious how you see the Lai administration differing from perhaps Tsai Ing-wen's.
Well, the President-elect Lai has vowed to preserve President Tsai's legacy. So I would say that we will expect to see some continuity in terms of their approach when it comes to cross-strait relations as well as relations with the United States. I think what differs between the new president and President Tsai is that he has not yet built the trust specifically for himself, unlike President Tsai that has proven himself to be a very steady hand and also practice a very moderate policy when it comes to these diplomatic issues. So I think that is something that President-elect Lai will have to establish really soon as he takes office.
What about the idea that the mandate might have been lacking a little bit, that there was just 40% of the people that voted, and that there's also now a difference between who's running the country and who's running parliament, i.e. a coalition?
Yeah, so I think the election result is quite in line with what the polls said before this, and it's quite expected. So he did not get a majority; it's only 40%. But given that it was a three-corner fight, I would say that this is still quite a solid result. That DPP has received a pretty good support. And going forward, as you said, that the DPP does not also control the majority at the legislative yuan. It means that there might have to be more consultations between the parties. There might be more negotiations. And it is true that the president might see his power relatively restrained. But I would say that all three parties do have some level of consensus when it comes to key issues such as maintaining a good ties with the U.S. So I would say, and also strengthening the defense capability of Taiwan. So I would say that we shouldn't see too much of a difficulty in maintaining some of these policies. Obviously, we will see more political theatrics, but I guess in every democracy, these check and balances are sometimes also always also a good thing.
I want to get to the China response, but I think I need to follow up. I think a lot of Kuomintang supporters are quite frustrated here, even though you say that, the result was a pretty solid result for the DPP. You have to almost go back to the year 2000 when James Song ran, that you had this begin to happen where the opposition to the DPP is divided like this. Do you expect that to continue, or do you think the next time around the opposition will be able to somehow form a coalition?
I think this time around, we definitely see a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of discontent towards the DPP that is now being viewed as an establishment. So a lot of these protest votes have either gone to the KMT or the TPP, especially the TPP who has gotten a lot of formerly DPP votes. So I would say that it really depends on how well President-elect Lai can really improve its policy, especially its domestic agenda, to win back these votes. Otherwise, I think that we might continue to see the opposition, being able to, based on these issues, will be able to get more support. As to whether the opposition can actually unite as one, I think that remains to be seen. I think really depends on how well they can work together this time around, and especially for TPP, what kind of role, what kind of stance that they're going to take, because at this moment it is still unclear whether they will work with the KMT or they could possibly also be working with the DPP government more closely.
I know Brian wants to ask about the China response, so let's do that now in case we run out of time. What kind of reaction did you have when you saw the statement compared to the statement 4 years ago?
I would say that, it is a relatively mild statement. I think that perhaps Beijing have also expected this result. And the fact that the fact that they did not win the majority at the legislative yuan, also maybe reduce some of Beijing's anxieties in terms of the influence of DPP. But I think essentially Beijing just wants to keep things under control. It does not want the tensions to overblown. Because I think that stability is what Beijing is looking for right now in terms of its relations with the U.S.
And what's interesting,
what's
interesting is that even with that mild response from China, we also saw a pretty mild response from Lai Ching-te. I mean, he did not really get up and beat the chest, did he? How do you interpret the comments that he made after the victory?
Yeah, I think that maintaining the status quo is really the preferred way forward for the Taiwanese population. So I think that there is this understanding that going forward there needs to be more, more moderation, and there needs to be that both sides need to find a way to resume dialogues, because it is not sustainable for both sides to continue these very tense relations where there is almost no dialogues have happened in the past 8 years. So I think that for the next new government, there needs to be also more effort to seek a mutual understanding with Beijing so that the cross-strait dialogue can resume.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, your morning brief on the stories making news from Hong Kong to Singapore and Wall Street.
Look for us on your podcast feed every day on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcast.
You can also listen live each day on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Brian Curtis.
And I'm Doug Krisner. Join us again tomorrow for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.